and welcome to another episode of Epic Events. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Candace Davis, and I'm the Director of Event Programming and Creative Services here at vFairs. And it's a delight to have you joining us today. Today's podcast is going to be a lot of fun. We'll be talking about creating unconventional communities. So I am really excited to hear from our guest, Leanne Calderwood. She is a certified meeting professional and personal branding and LinkedIn trainer. So, Leanne, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Candace. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. And, I found you on LinkedIn because you are this extraordinaire, LinkedIn trainer, as, is in your title. And you have so much to share with us today on how to go about finding the community that we're supposed to be in, whether that's, professional, maybe a little bit of, business in there, a little personal, just some questions that I have for you too that we'll go through today. But what do you hope to bring to our audience by the end of this podcast?
Yeah, thanks. That's probably the most important question, Candace, because I think we all define community differently and we all have hesitations on joining communities. So I really hope to break down the paradigm of what a community can look like and how it can benefit one's career. So I really do hope that everyone walks away just thinking about community a little bit differently and breaking down what those traditional stereotypes of community used to be.
That sounds great, Leanne. And before we dive in, because I'm super excited about this topic, but let our listeners know where you live in the world and what you do kind of on a day-to-day basis. It might look completely different, but just give us a little, insight into your life.
Yeah, thank you. So my geographical community is in Kelowna, BC, Canada. So we're about 4 hours east of Vancouver, for those of you familiar with that region. And yes, my day to day, I hold down two jobs kind of in the meetings and events industry. I am a site selection professional with Conference Direct, so I have a community over there. But I also help empower meeting and event professionals around LinkedIn and creating a personal brand that helps them stand apart. And that's really the community that we might be diving into today. So a lot of communities kind of in my world, and excited to share with you all about how you can create your own community network.
Yeah, and I love this term, just unconventional community. And when I think about community, that's in the business world, in our careers, and it's also personal, and maybe there's some kind of overlap there too that we can take back from the learnings that you're going to walk us through today, and we can kind of take that back with us, and in both areas of our life. So I'm excited to dive into that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So first I wanted to ask you, because I know you mentioned community means something different to everybody, and isn't that true? But what does unconventional community mean to you? Let's start with that first.
Yeah, well, I think unconventional community really goes beyond what a traditional community might look like. And for those in the meetings and events and marketing space, traditional communities are those geographical communities, the neighborhoods that we live in. But it's also maybe the associations that we belong to. That's one of the most powerful communities that I think we can join, is a professional association that provides that education. But community has gone well beyond the borders of professional associations. And those are the unconventional communities that I'm hoping people can tap into, because there's something a little bit more unique and niche about finding those unconventional communities in addition to those large association communities that we're probably already a part of.
Yeah, great. And the question next I wanted to kind of dive into, now that we've kind of unwrapped the meaning of the unconventional community, how do you start? Where do you find yours? This is a big question, I know, but this is kind of and help us dive into this a little deeper.
Yeah, it is. And, I kind of look at where to find communities, much like a mind map. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the mind map exercise, but you kind of put the word community in the center, and then it's got these spider legs that are going to branch out into these different places. And so, yeah, let's start to talk about what these branches can look like. And the first branch, I think, is starting with your professional association. And here's why. Back in the day, and now we're going back to that traditional community model, is the professional associations had a one size fits all type of mentality. But a lot of our professional associations now are diving into more of the niche communities within the community. So take a look at your professional association and see if there's some smaller pop ups within that association. And if I could give you one example, I'm a member of MPI, Meeting Professionals International. That's one that some of your listeners might be familiar with, Candace. And MPI has now created these niche communities inside of the larger whole. So it's no longer about locational chapters, which I think is still very important, but it's also creating community around a common interest. So I belong to the small business owners community because I have a small business. But there's also communities for women. There's also communities for people of color. There's communities for people in diversity and inclusion. So we've created, or rather the associations created, these niche communities within the larger community. So I think that's a really good place to start because it's a community model we're all kind of familiar with anyway, if we have a professional association membership. But the ones that I'm really excited about, Candace, and the ones that I think that provide a lot more opportunity are those communities that you can find in the virtual world. And of course, I'm a LinkedIn geek, so I got to start looking at LinkedIn. And LinkedIn groups is a great place to find community as well. So you can go onto the platform and you can search groups by a number of different search terms, be it your job title, be it some of the skill sets that you're looking for, even maybe some of the skill sets and job titles of those you're trying to impact and influence, and becoming a part of that community. So LinkedIn groups is a great place to start, but if you're not finding the right LinkedIn group, don't worry, there's other ways of finding community on LinkedIn. It could be through a piece of like-minded content and finding people that also resonate with that content and figuring out where they hang out in their communities. So those are two kind of LinkedIn hacks that I have for finding communities, but it can also go beyond LinkedIn as well. You know, we have a number of meetup sites online now that you can dive in and find people with common interests and like-minded interests. So there's a number of online ways that you can find these traditional communities, but start with what you know. Let's kind of flesh out what those associations look like and the smaller communities that might have within there. Go to LinkedIn and find some communities there. And if I can challenge you, if you're not finding the right community, Candace, we can even go about starting our own community. Now that we have platforms like Slack and WhatsApp, it's really easy for us to create these grassroots communities of 3 or 4 people that we'd like to get to know better. And they start to grow over time as people start to become a magnet to these smaller niche communities. So I know it's a large question, and hopefully I've filled out a few of those spider legs on this mind map of where to find these communities. But those would be the top 3 places I would suggest people could start.
And I think those are fabulous. They're great. And I have seen, personally the impact on LinkedIn groups, finding some event communities out there locally here to Nashville, where I'm located, some people who are maybe in the virtual space as well. And it's amazing what you see when maybe there's an event professional who says, hey, I have an event in Nashville in 2 weeks and I can't be there. Is there anyone who can go on site ahead of time and tell me more about the parking or, this, A, B, or C kind of thing. And I've seen people jump in and say, yep, I got your back. Let's get on a meeting. Let's talk a little bit more about this. Happy to do that for you. And it's really cool seeing the impact of this and people coming together from all across the world. But just in my little community, seeing these things trickle, that kind of trickle effect is really powerful and just tells me it's a small world. At the end of the day, all of us live all over the globe. You're in Canada, I'm here in the US. But at the end of the day, we're one team, we're coming together, and it's a big, big impact. So LinkedIn has definitely been that for me.
And I think you've just mentioned the biggest benefit to having community is you never know when you're going to need your community until it happens. Wow. So community building is all about fostering those relationships and creating those connections so that when you do require some assistance or you require some feedback, or in your case, you require literally hands-on help at an event, the community is already plugged in and built. And so you're able to tap into those resources. And that's what I love to think about communities is you never kind of know what the benefits are until you wake up one day and you're like, wow, I really need to lean on my people right now. And I've spent some time creating those relationships. So this is an easy way to get to know them better, and an easy ask when I need some feedback or help.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for fostering trust, like we talked about, that's a big thing. Me personally, I'm a big person of trust, and you and I, we've gotten to know each other, but you may not have trusted me to be on this podcast, or, vice versa. But we came together, we talked about, who we are and what we do, and we just connected. And I thought that Leanne would be an amazing fit, on the podcast. And so we came together again through LinkedIn, and just kind of forming those communities and what we have together. And going back to, maybe, can you share a unique approach or strategy that helps foster that trust we talked about?
Well, and let's talk about us, Candace, you and I. You checked out my LinkedIn profile and kind of found some of those keywords that you were looking for to bring on podcast guests. And that created a credibility and trust that you had in me. And then you asked me to be on the podcast. And what's the first thing that I did, Candace?
Well, you asked a couple of really good questions, like, hey, like, can you share some materials? Can we meet together and see if this is a good fit? And that's what I really appreciate about you. You weren't just going to take any opportunity that came at you. You wanted to verify that it was, legit.
Yeah.
And
And I verified it by obviously asking you those questions, but then I measured it against your LinkedIn profile. And I was looking for those consistencies in your messaging, consistencies in your brand. So if I could put my LinkedIn geek hat back on, having a clear, consistent message in your LinkedIn profile is one of the fastest ways that you can build trust if you're finding that community within LinkedIn or using LinkedIn. So it all goes back to basics, right, Candace? You have an optimized profile that's very clear and consistent about your message, what your job is in the industry, what the podcast is about. And that created credibility in you. So I was able to trust you very quickly by just looking at your LinkedIn profile. And then, of course, your messaging via email matched that conversation. And so it became very easy for me to trust you. And this is where I think the breakdown comes, is if we don't have a robust LinkedIn profile, people aren't sure how to measure that credibility and how to fact check that the person you're collaborating with is a reputable and legit source. And so having a robust LinkedIn profile is step number one, I think, if you're going to build community. Whether you build it inside or outside of LinkedIn, people are going to check you out and make sure that you are the right person for the community. So I hope that kind of helps with creating that know, like, and trust factor. And then it goes beyond that. And so, Candace, what you've done really well with fostering trust is you have this robust podcast, and people are able to see that you have a proven track record of delivering value week after week after week via this platform, this medium. The same goes for anyone else who's creating content. It might not be a podcast. It could be a LinkedIn post. It could be a blog. It could be a video show somewhere. So when we start to create trust and credibility through our content, then people know, number one, what our subject matter expertise is, but number two, this is someone that I can lean on in times of need. And that's going back to your previous question, Candace, about creating that community of trust that you can lean on one another. And content is a really powerful way that you can create that trust.
Exactly. And, I couldn't agree with you more, going back to the point of cultivating that strong personal brand. And we're all learning, I think we look to, especially people like you and each other, how are they doing, their photo, or how are they doing their tagline underneath, their photo, and really having that expansive, LinkedIn profile really does help add interest, because I go to those so many times when I'm looking for podcast guests, just like I did you, and it verified, hey, I think Leanne would be a great fit. And then I went to other podcasts and other videos that you had on your page. And I just knew that you would be, wonderful on. So glad that all happened, Leanne. But I think you answered my next question around cultivating a strong personal brand and how that contributes, and helps you find the right community and network of people, and all of that kind of falls in line.
Yeah, well, I think being very intentional about the types of communities you're looking for goes back to what is it that your personal brand is all about. Because when we create our personal brands, we're really doing it as it aligns with our strengths, our skills, and even our belief and value system. So when you have kind of articulated your own brand, that makes finding community so much easier because now you're able to drill down where is it that you want to cultivate community. And so one example could be that if you have a skill set that you want to learn more about and that you have a passion for, those are the types of communities that you might want to seek out. So Candace, you and I, we're both meeting and event professionals, but we also have other things and layers in our personal brand. You as a podcast host might find community with other podcast hosts where you can riff about best practices and things that are working and things that are not. I belong to a couple of communities all filled with LinkedIn geeks. And that's all we do all day long is we talk about LinkedIn. Does it have anything to do with meetings and events? Absolutely not. But that is a strong passion of mine. It's a strong pillar of my personal brand. And so I learn my craft through my peers who are also very interested in the LinkedIn platform. So that goes back to those unconventional communities as well. When we talk about, do our communities, especially in the meetings and events and marketing space, does our community have to always be about marketing? Well, no, it actually doesn't. There's something else that you're passionate about that you can find community about. Maybe it's your passion about finding AI tips and tricks. There's a whole bunch of AI communities popping up on the radar because it's such a hot and trendy thing right now. So that's I guess one way that our brand kind of dictates how we can find these communities. And in a lot of cases, it's unconventional ways or unconventional communities that are feeding that need that we have.
Right. And I want to talk a little bit about the flip side of online communities because there is a lot of, pros, a lot of, pluses with that, but also there are some cons that come with it too, like anything. But, sometimes people feel like with online communities, maybe it just depends on how long it's been an online community, or maybe it's kind of losing its, kind of energy behind it. But sometimes it can feel a little bit disjointed or maybe impersonal to someone. How would you suggest individuals go, beyond the digital realm of establishing meaningful connections from these online groups?
Yeah, and you're right. And I'm a raging introvert, Candace. So large communities are very overwhelming for me. And it's difficult to get engaged, especially as an introvert. It's difficult to engage in a larger community. And so my, I think, biggest best practice is identify some of the individuals within that larger community that you do want to get to know better, and then create a micro community around that. And I've done that actually several times. I'm a serial community builder. So inside of those communities, if I've identified 4 or 5 individuals that I want to hear more from, is I'll reach out to them and create a separate WhatsApp chat or a separate LinkedIn messaging chat. Or I think I've done a Slack chat with some of these people as well. So, again, like bringing those communities down to a smaller level isn't a con. In a lot of instances, that becomes a pro because those relationships deepen even further, and that know, like, and trust factor gets amped up even higher. So when communities are feeling overwhelming and too large, where you're just not able to get a word in edgewise, find either smaller communities or start to create them on your own. I think people are drawn to those smaller communities because there's more learning potential. So if you're the one who can step out and create that community, people are going to follow you.
Agreed. I agreed with that for sure. I love that you said you're a serial LinkedIn group.
Serial community builder. I can't tell you how many WhatsApp chats I have that are 4 or 5 people here, 4 or 5 people there. I've got my LinkedIn ladies over here. I've got my morning routine group over here. And I just started the other day a group of people who are launching online courses. And so it's just a group of 4 of us who, again, kind of engage with one another when we have questions around that very, very niche little tiny thing. But I learned so much in those micro communities. And of course, the friendships also flourish in there as well.
Yeah, I love hearing this. And also, I might need to become a part of this morning routine group. So
Okay.
feel free to add me in there.
Awesome. That would be great, because that one, I think, I'll be honest, my morning routine needs a little bit of a pick me up. So you have just inspired me to reignite that little community, Candace. So you and I are going to hold each other accountable.
We said it here, so we
Yep,
have.
absolutely. It's happening.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that ahead of time. But I wanted to ask you too, all the nuances, the ins and outs of LinkedIn. And this is just like a side kind of question too. But is there some sort of, feature on LinkedIn that a lot of professionals don't tap into and take, the initiative to get to know? And maybe it's something that's more hidden and not as, prominent for us. I'm asking for a friend here. So
Yeah.
I know you're a big fan of the LinkedIn groups, which I love LinkedIn groups, but is there something else we should know that we should be doing?
Yeah, well, and so this is my biggest tip for fostering that trust and creating that deeper connection. When you're either first degree connected to someone, so these are people that you're first degree connection with, or you're a member of the same group, right? So now we're going back to that group model. You have the ability to message them freely. And when you have that ability and you do so on your phone, I know I'm going down a little bit of a trail here, but stay with me, Candace. You can leave them an audio or a video message versus a written message. And that, in my opinion, helps people stand apart from the clutter and stand out from all of the online noise. We get so used to typing and being on our keyboard in these online communities. But when you can use audio notes or a short video, wow, that creates a lot of impact and influence. And so if you're able to do that to a small group of individuals, again, in a LinkedIn DM message, you can create these small groups, and using your phone, send a video or audio message. That amps up that know, like, and trust factor so quickly. So it's a feature not many people use, and hopefully they start to use it.
That's really cool. I think maybe that can be terrifying for some people, going back to being introverted too. But, it's just step out of your comfort zone. It's amazing when I get emails or things like that from LinkedIn where it's someone on video, you're just not ready for it. But it's really cool, like, hey, I learned about your company on LinkedIn. I want to know more about this. It's just really neat to see it versus, again, just sitting behind a computer or your phone and just typing it out.
Well, and I think that first video message is always the toughest.
Yeah.
So send that one to a trusted friend or a trusted LinkedIn friend, right? Let's grab at the low-hanging fruit here. Let's practice with the people that we already know, like, and trust, because they're not going to judge us. In fact, you might be the one that's encouraging them to step out and create their first video as well. And then once you get in the rhythm and you've got a system set up, sending those video messages becomes super easy. And again, the impact is incredible. So hopefully people will step out and listen. If you don't have any friends to practice with, send me your DM, my friend. I would love to see your video and be of assistance in any way that I can.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do it, Leanne. I'm going to do it.
Okay,
I'm I'm a little bit introverted. I'm a little bit extroverted. I'm one of those types where maybe a video message at first I go, oh, that's really cool, but I may not actually follow through and do it, So I
just try it. Just try it. Again, try it with me, Candace. I'm a safe zone, right? I'm a safe place. So send me your video message.
Okay, I will. I'll be doing that. Be looking out for it.
Perfect.
Didn't know this podcast. I mean, obviously it does push and challenge me in some very good directions, but this is homework for me to take away from this podcast, Leanne. So
awesome. I love it.
I want to talk a little bit about mentorship. When you and I initially first met together, we talked about LinkedIn, and all the plus and pros about using it and being an event professional, and just how big it is and how small it is at the same time. Going back to that, we're in a big world, but really is small at the end of the day, like that example that I shared earlier. And bringing people together, and LinkedIn really does do that for a lot of individuals. But also, I have a lot of people that come to me and want to talk about mentorship. And it's something that we've been talking a lot about on the podcast lately. And
Mhm.
it means a lot to me because I saw it all through my career, being in college and X amount of years ago. Um, and then even today, how mentorship really has brought me to where I am today. And I've seen it happen in other people's lives. I've been a mentor, I've been a mentee, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about as a professional. And I wanted to ask, you specifically being a LinkedIn, trainer and pro, about mentorship and your thoughts on using LinkedIn to find a mentor, to find a good match, and how to go about that.
Yeah, so I love the mentorship conversation so very much. In fact, and if you don't mind me sharing, I was just welcomed into the Canadian Meetings and Events Hall of Fame this year as the industry mentor. So I've been mentoring for a long time, but my type of mentorship, again, maybe my brand needs to be all about unconventional and breaking down paradigms, because I've been welcomed into the Hall of Fame as an industry mentor, but the irony is I have no mentees. And so LinkedIn has provided me the platform and the opportunity to mentor and encourage and inspire on a large scale. And so that's how people kind of consider me as a mentor, is they see the things that I'm posting online. It could be a small thing that's helping them with their day, their work, or their career, and they've labeled me as their online mentor. And so I think, mentorship has the traditional mentorship model of, like, I liken it to you go to coffee, and you have that sit down and you do your 30-minute strategy session, and your mentor gives you a couple pieces of homework, and you go away and you come back a month later, same coffee shop, same time. I loved those mentorship meetings, and I had those mentorship meetings many, many times early in my career. But now with LinkedIn and online, your mentorship can look different. Number one, it can be one to many. So you're no longer doing that one-on-one mentorship. But the other mentoring model that I really have kind of grown very passionate about is called the friend-ter model. So friend meaning a friend, like you're my friend, Candace, ter. And that's where we're no longer in that mentor and mentee relationship, but we are both smart professionals coming together and sharing with one another. So there are some things that I will help my friend with, and conversely, there are some things that she will help me with. So finding those friendters, and you've probably heard the word mastermind come up, those mastermind people, those are unconventional mentoring relationships that you can find online or in person as well. And so if you're looking for those kinds of relationships on LinkedIn, I think it starts with creating those micro communities and finding those 2 or 3 people that together you can mentor one another in that friend-tering relationship. So I don't know if anyone else has a friend-tering relationship, but I've learned more through those kinds of mentoring partnerships than I ever did through that traditional mentor and mentee model. Now, having said that, those models, there's still an immense amount of value in it, but it's just not the only platform or the only way that you can create that mentoring relationship and get those outcomes that you're looking for. I think my biggest piece of advice when we're looking for mentors is look for someone who's 1 or 2 steps ahead of you in the skill set or in the career path that you're looking to achieve. If you're looking for someone who's 10 or 15 steps ahead of you, it's going to be very difficult to find the tactical things that you can do today to propel you forward. But if you find someone who's just been through the messy middle that you find yourself in right now, man, there's a lot of ways that you can share with one another and get yourself into the next step of the career journey. So I hope that helps, Candace, because I have a lot to say about mentoring too. Maybe that's the next podcast that we do.
Yeah, I'm writing it down now. So mentorship. Okay. All right, we're gonna have a little follow up to this.
Yeah.
I love how you see this in the friend tour. I think that's brilliant, and no one knows you better sometimes than your friends. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And, even colleagues, I think it's important to have that kind of relationship too, and say, hey, you see my work, how can it get better? How can I be better? That sort of thing. But also taking it on a more of a personal level, and a friend, like you and I,
Yep.
and, me and, a close, maybe best friend that I've had for a long time, because they know you super well. They know you personally, and they know you, in your professional career, if they follow you on LinkedIn, and they know, what you've done and what your career has looked like for a number of years. So I
Yeah.
think that's a brilliant idea. I absolutely love that friend tour. So everyone out there, you heard it from Leanne first. Go and find that friend tour, that friend who can also be a mentor, vice versa too.
Mhm.
That's so cool. And, with us talking about the rise of remote work, I wanted to touch on that a little bit as we kind of shift gears into, digital networking. It's become huge, especially over the past, let's say 3 to 5 years. Getting on LinkedIn, making sure that your profile picture looks up to date, it looks clean, it looks professional. You have that tagline. I love playing around with that sometimes. I don't know if you do the same thing, because you can add so much to it. And then
Every week. I change mine every week.
do you?
Candace. Yes.
And then isn't there the feature where you can, I don't know if you have this, you probably do. I can click on your photo and it pulls up a video that you've, like a little welcome to
Yeah.
my LinkedIn. I think
Yeah.
that's also cool. I need more time to do that sort of stuff, Leanne. So maybe you can help me in those areas too. But you do everything so well. So
Oh, thank
anyone
you.
who's listening, please go and see Leanne's page. If you want to know what your LinkedIn should be looking like these days, there's some tips and tricks for you. But it's been super, important for people to connect online, like we've been talking about, and find your community, and maybe some people that are in your career path, and maybe some that are not, that you want to learn from. It's such a big world and community out there. But when we talk about remote work, how can
Mhm.
individuals identify the right communities to join and to engage with when it's so big, but
Mhm.
for personal and professional development? Because that's been a really big thing to go over these past few years, getting back into professional development. Because for so long, we are just a one-track mind, just got to do my job, just got to get through, these next couple of years. But now we're, we have a little more space maybe to dive back into some pro dev.
Well, and so what remote work obviously eliminated in many of our professionals' lives is that water cooler talk and that ability to connect with colleagues and bosses, in real time down the hall and in the lunchroom. When we're remote, we still can create those opportunities. It's just going to look a little bit different. So, for a professional that's kind of on that career path and that career trajectory, if your leader is not scheduling those calls with you, you're scheduling calls with them and creating those Zoom meeting opportunities where you can bring your colleagues together and have those strategy sessions. It might not be in person, but you're still able to do that. And then for those entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs who don't really have anyone to talk to, yes, the online world, and we've kind of talked about how to find all those communities in the online world. But it can get overwhelming. And you said it, Candace, it's a big world. There's a ton of places. This mind map we've created is now growing of different opportunities. Going back to the goals of why you're trying to find community is so important. So go back to, what is it that I want out of a community? What kind of skill sets am I looking for to grow in myself, or that I want to glean from other people? And really bringing that big world really down to a micro niche of what kind of community you should be finding. Because I am a serial community builder, I found myself at times being diluted and overwhelmed with all the communities that I was trying to be a part of. And it wasn't until I kind of reined in my goals and said, okay, listen, what am I really wanting out of this community or out of a community as a whole? Was I able to kind of prune some of the communities that were no longer serving me? And that's okay to walk away when it no longer serves you, and then put your focus in the communities that were serving you and feeding you and helping you grow. So bringing it back to the goals, Candace, I think is so important. And especially when you're remote, stay in touch with your organization through those Microsoft team meetings, those Zoom meetings. Don't let them know that you've disappeared. You are still 100% present and ready to contribute on projects.
Yeah, I think that's great for individuals to take back, with them too, on how to find their place, and not feeling so overwhelmed, but also finding that area. And you mentioned too, just making sure that you're connecting with your direct manager and your team. That's a big thing, creating that culture where everyone has a place and you're open and you can come together and brainstorm. That's probably been one of my, you know, just funnest things here, if
Yeah.
funnest is a word. Most fun things that I've been able to be a part of is just creating a lot of different brainstorm sessions with our team, with even professionals that are out there that I get to work with. It's just so cool hearing how their mind works, how their brain works live when you're all together, sitting on Zoom or Google Meet, whatever it might be. In person together, of course, too, is the best. But when you can't do that, you all come together virtually, which is second best, I'd say.
Well, and we're in a lucky industry because the meetings and events space, we have the most meetings of anyone out there. So if you're plugged into the meetings and events industry and some of the association events, those in-person opportunities are going to pop up, whether it's local in your city of Nashville, or it's in the state, or it's national or international. There's always opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals when you're in our industry.
Very true. You said it well.
Mm-hmm.
I have
too many sometimes.
I do. Yeah, I do feel that. Just in my local city, there's so many of us, but hopefully one day we'll be able to meet in person, Leanne. That would be really cool.
I agree. That'd be great.
So cool. I have two more questions to ask you, and this is, more maybe on a personal level, and just being that seasoned expert that you are with LinkedIn, I could probably go all day and just ask you, tons of questions here, but we'll follow up maybe with the part 2 with our mentorship, podcast session. But my second to last question is, could you share a personal success story that you might have where your engagement in maybe an unconventional online community or maybe a LinkedIn group like you talked about earlier directed you in a super impactful way through your career journey?
Yeah, well, and I think I'd like to go back to a community that I found kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. So, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there was a platform called Clubhouse, which is an audio platform where you can find community around a topic or around a speaker who's doing some things. Anyways, I found a community on Clubhouse. It's called the Thought Leadership Branding Club. It didn't always start as that. It just started out as a bunch of people who came to this audio room every day at 1 p.m. And we talked about, the thought leadership topic du jour. And it kind of morphed into now this club. And I can tell you, most of the micro communities I belong to have been branches of the Thought Leadership Branding Club. So now I do my own audio room on Fridays with 3 people in that club. And then I have a WhatsApp channel with another 3 different individuals from that club. And I have a friend-to relationship with another person from that club. So while the dollars and cents, Candace, may not be, if you're looking for that kind of figure, I can't really monetize it. But the richness of dialogue has been exponential. And what I loved about, and still love about, all of these communities that have kind of branched off the Thought Leadership Branding Club is it has nothing to do with meetings and events. I'm the only meetings and events professional within this community. So it allows a lot of diversity of thought. And one example is I'm in kind of a segment of this community where we're all LinkedIn trainers, but we all train different types of audiences, or the way we train looks different. The way we present in person looks different. So it's bringing all of that diversity of thought together. And that's, again, Thought Leadership Branding Club. I have to credit them for creating the opportunity to find your people And kind of, again, that diversity of thought within the club has been incredible. It's opened my eyes in a way that I never did before the pandemic, when I kind of lived in my meetings and events silo. But now I see there's a whole big world out there in professionalism, and it's been unbelievable. And I think a lot of what I've learned has contributed to my success in the meetings and events industry, because I'm able to bring that diversity of thought back to our industry. So I hope that answered your question, but I'd be remiss if I didn't give a big shout out to that particular community that was formed in the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah, of course. It's so neat to hear stories like yours and to know that it's still living on today. It might have morphed a little bit along the way, but it's still going strong. And, all of you didn't have a whole lot in common, LinkedIn trainers, but,
Yeah. Well, this one community, if you don't mind me saying, this one community, or this one micro community, is we do an audio room on Fridays, and there's 4 of us that host the audio room. Myself in Kelowna, Canada, another LinkedIn trainer out of Toronto, Canada, which is on the other side of the coast for me, and then 2 gentlemen, and they're both in Australia. So they help host this audio room at 7:00 in the morning on a Saturday morning every weekend, with us 2 Canadian girls at 1 and 4 p.m. on a Friday. And we've been doing that for a year. Like, this is not a flash in a pan. We are going on episodes 52 and 53 and 54. We've been doing it together so long. I've never met any of them. So we come together once a week to host this room together, and I've never met these individuals before.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
wow.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. And so what are some of the topics you talk about? I'm sure you laugh, you talk about serious things, but it's kind of everything that comes up maybe.
Yeah, actually, it is a very, very niche audio room. We talk about LinkedIn, obviously, and we talk about social selling and how sales can be done differently versus traditional selling. So it is a lot about, so we attract a lot of people from, again, diverse industries that are in some kind of sales role. And we talk a lot about how to use LinkedIn to do that social selling.
Super cool.
It's fun.
Wow. All right. My last question for you, Leanne, this is one that it's probably one of my favorite questions to ask you, because I really want to know what your answers are here, but would love to know your top 3 tips, actionable tips for listeners and myself, who are looking to forge more meaningful connections, let's say, through these unconventional communities that we've been talking about. So 3 top actionable tips from you.
Gosh. Okay. So I'm keeping it to 3. I think we've touched on a couple of them already, but finding unconventional communities online on LinkedIn, your first stop has to be LinkedIn groups. So take a look around LinkedIn groups. You can search groups through the search bar using some keywords or some job titles, and find ones that are active. There's going to be a lot of LinkedIn groups out there that are not active. And so you got to do some hunting and pecking to find the right ones. But I can tell you, once you find an active group, there's a great place to start to try and find those like-minded individuals and create micro community. The second place is actually through hashtags. And you might think that hashtags doesn't have a place on LinkedIn, but it really, really does. So start to search out relevant hashtags or keyword hashtags and find out who is using those hashtags as well. And then you can see what groups they are in. So you can go to their profile and check out what groups that they're a part of. So that's a great way of finding groups as well, but also finding engaged people who are engaged in a hashtag conversation, which remember what a hashtag is it really is a grouping of conversations around a certain topic or skill. And then the third place is to start engaging in content around the community that you want to build. So if you're looking to build community around, let's say, LinkedIn, start to engage in content on LinkedIn about LinkedIn. That's very meta. Maybe we should choose a different, about podcasting. Let's say you want to engage in communities around how to be a better podcaster or how to be a better podcast guest. Start to comment and engage in content around podcasting. That's going to get you on the radar of people. That's going to start, you're going to start to learn, okay, who are the people that I want to learn more from? And bada bing, bada boom, you can start to find those communities or create those micro communities of your own with those individuals that you want to learn from.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to start doing all three of those things. So your top three
A lot
tips,
of homework.
your top three tips, Leanne, for that last question was make sure that you are finding groups in LinkedIn. You're using the hashtag feature as well, which I really think that comes in handy. And then third, to start to start engaging with all of these folks. And that's how you start creating, like you mentioned, finding who your people are, start creating your communities and find, where you land there. Cause I think that's a great starting point too. And the friendships and, that come out of it too. Someone may answer your question and they may kind of follow you through the other groups and you find what groups they're in, like you mentioned. And, there you go. There you have one of your audio rooms that you just talked about with folks around the world.
There you go. So it's all full circle, Candace. It's all full circle.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Well, Leanne, thanks so much for being on the show today and sharing all of your insights around LinkedIn, personal branding, and just creating those communities and going to find those communities if they aren't already created already. So thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you before we sign off, where can our audience find you? Obviously LinkedIn, but
yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place, but I also do have a website over at leannecalderwood.com. And that's where I share weekly blog posts around LinkedIn, branding, mentorship, community, social selling, etc.
Wonderful. Well, please go and check Leanne out. She is an absolute gem and so proud to be in this industry with her. So thank you also to all of the amazing folks out there. Thank you for listening in today to this episode. And many thanks, as we have more episodes coming in the coming weeks as we go into Q4, which is pretty crazy here pretty soon. And we have a lot of amazing topics to cover too. And a part 2 coming with Leanne at some point, maybe 2024, Leanne.
I would love that. Thank you.
Okay, noted. And if you want to reach out to us here at vFairs, feel free. We would love to hear from you. You can always reach out to me directly. I also have a LinkedIn and our email address, sales@vfairs.com. We are here to support and help any way that we can. But until the next episode of Epic Events, peace, love, events. Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.